In this section, I'm going to be talking about using your calculator in class. This is the calculator that I use, the TI-30XS. You may be used to graphing calculators, or you might be used to using a calculator on your phone, but in this class and in other chemistry classes, you need to use a scientific non-graphing calculator. So I'm going to go over a couple of operations. It's very important for you to practice using your scientific calculator in class as well as on the homework, because that way, if you can't get the same answer that I'm getting, even though you're doing all the work the same, you need to come see me. Now, all the different non-graphing calculators have very similar bits to them, so I'm just going to go over mine. If you have any questions about yours, you should definitely come see me during office hours, and sooner is definitely always better than later. So we have the basic functions here, right? Addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. So I want to point your attention to a couple of things. The first is these words that are above some of the letters. Usually above the buttons. It's usually the opposite of whatever is being done here. So for example, when you do the log, you can do the base 10 power. Whenever you do an exponent, you have the radical symbol. So in order to get to those, you have to hit the second key and then whatever one that you want to use. The next thing that I want to point your attention to is the mode. I always keep mine in scientific notation. To change on this one, you would go to mode, and then you would key down and go to the scientific notation. The reason why I do this is because it gives me my answers in scientific notation. So if I do 5 with a bunch of zeros after it, and I hit enter, it gives me my scientific notation number. If I ever need to see it as a decimal or a whole number, I can just hit this little double arrow symbol here, and over on the left-hand side, it gives me the value. When it comes to punching in very small or very large numbers, I've seen two different variants. On my calculator, it has the times 10 to the power. On some calculators, you might see it as an E. So let's say I wanted to punch in Avogadro's number for my for a calculation. I would put 6.022. I would hit this little times 10 power, and then I would hit 23. If I wanted to do any further operations on this particular calculator, you need to hit the right button in order to take it down. So if I wanted to add parentheses or if I wanted to multiply it, otherwise you end up staying in that exponential number. Where students have a tendency to get into problems is whenever they need to do operations with very large or very small numbers. I highly, highly recommend that you always use parentheses in order to separate numbers out. Now, you might get lucky. Okay, sometimes the numbers just work out right, or sometimes your calculator is smart enough not to multiply and divide where it shouldn't. But let's say I wanted to do 1 times 10 to the 10th and multiply it against the same number. What I would do here is I would say 1 times 10 to the 10th. I'd hit my right arrow key, put the parenthesis, multiply it times that 1 times 10, end parenthesis. Then I get my number. You may end up getting lucky if you don't use the parentheses, but these calculators have a tendency to not care about what you want and just give you whatever number it works best with the operations that you're giving. And on an exam, sometimes students have a tendency not to bring down the cursor. So now they have something like 1 times 10 to the 10th times 1 times 10 to the 10th. And this will probably give me an overflow. Okay, because it's a huge number. So just be careful whenever you're doing these operations. Another issue that arises is forgetting that this times 10 to the nth power happens, or you need to just use a regular exponent, and it's not the same thing. Do not confuse this with this. They are two totally different things. Okay, one of them is going to try to take your answer and take it to the base 10. The other one is going to do the scientific notation 10 power. If you want to do an exponent, we use the little caret symbol over here. So let's say I just wanted to do 5 squared. Here. Another thing that happens is whenever we want to do not square roots, but cube roots or higher roots, the way that we would do this is, let's say I wanted to take the cube root of 8. I would punch second, and then I have this little X where the root symbol is. Okay. Excuse me. First, I need to punch a number in. So I said I wanted to do cube roots. So I would do 3 and then do my root. And then I could punch in the number I want to take the root number of. Hit enter and I'd get 2. Be careful with that. You notice that before it went backwards into using my answer for whatever the root was. So on this root, you need to punch in the number first. Earlier I mentioned that some calculators don't have that times 10, or you might not get the times 10 as your part of your answer. What you'll see sometimes is either EXP or EE, not to be confused with just E. E is the natural log. EXP, on the other hand, kind of works like 10 power. So if I wanted to say something like 6.022 times 10 to the 10th, I would put in my EXP, or excuse me, times 10 to the 23rd, like this. So you see the little e here. Sometimes it'll be on a calculator as EE. Here it's the little e. Not to be confused with this E. I know there's a lot of E's running around here and it's difficult to tell, but this is a function, okay? This little e down at the bottom is a function. This E up here at the top is telling you that there's a 10 power. Again, on your calculator, you might see it like this, or you might see it as EE. That's generally the convention that's done. The only calculator that I could pull up that had something like this on it so that I could show you was the Microsoft calculator. I hope this has been informative to you. It's really important for you to come see me if you are not getting the same answers as I am on a calculator. Okay? The last thing that I would ever want to see is for a student to completely understand what they're doing, but get super frustrated on an exam because they can't get their calculator to punch up the proper answers.